Welcome to AI for Good, the leading, action-oriented, global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Agency for Digital Technologies, in partnership with 40+ UN sister organizations and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to identify innovative applications, build skills and standards, and advance partnerships to solve global challenges. In today's AI for Good event, we are counting on you to use the live video wall feature, to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end to chat, connect, ask questions, and network with our distinguished facilitators and world-class AI experts in the neural network. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Janette. I am a fourth-year undergraduate applied physics major at the University of California, Davis, and I am president of the Quantum Computing Club at UC Davis, which is part of a larger organization of university quantum computing clubs called the Quantum Coalition. I will be moderating today's event, and we're very excited to be working with the ITU to host Flick, the Future Leaders in Quantum Virtual Hackathon, to celebrate the International Year of Quantum. The hackathon will be taking place from May 16th through the 20th, so please go check that out. Today, I will be moderating the workshop, The Hackathon Playbook, How to Build, Pitch, and Win. We are joined by Martin and Shantanu. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Would it be okay if you briefly introduce yourselves, maybe starting with Shantanu?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation. My name is Shantanu. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at MIT, where I build superconducting circuit-based quantum computers. My research is focused on quantum error correction. And I guess the most relevant part of my background is I love quantum outreach, and I've been involved in different capacities as a competitor, as a mentor, and as an organizer of various quantum hackathons during my time at Yale as an undergraduate student and during the last 4 years at MIT as well.
I guess I should take over. So hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to join this panel. So my name is Martin. I am a physicist at CERN. The last 20 years, I spent down in the caverns of the organization looking at particles. But in August, I actually took on a new challenge at the Open Quantum Institute, still at CERN. We are a collaborative platform to push the technology of quantum algorithms beyond the state of the art, focusing on SDGs. And I think also relevant is that I've been organizing quite a few hackathons at CERN, and I'm really a convinced believer of the power of these sort of events to boost creativity and provide a unique experience.
Thank you. That's good to know. I didn't know that CERN organized hackathons, so I'm sure the audience
Oh, yes.
will be very interested. Okay, so to kick off, I'd like to ask both panelists, in your experience, what's the biggest misconception people have about hackathons? And either one of you can start.
My mic is open, so maybe I'll get the ball rolling. So from my experience, the key motivation to participate into a hackathon is not the prizes. Really, it's really the experience, meaning that it is one of these configurations of events where you've got this opportunity to leverage collective brain power and exploit complementary skills. You know, as a species, we are social animals, but in science, it is particularly relevant when you see a group of young talents really contributing together into producing something. And yes, there are prices. Yes, you need incentive. But my, the personal opinion is that what brings somebody to really go and register is more the experience than the price.
One misconception I'd love to dispel is that there's a prerequisite to joining a hackathon. There are many hackathons that are specialized or focused in some area. I've experienced with these quantum hackathons. I think that the less you know going into hackathon, the more you will get out of it. It's this intense period where you're with like-minded individuals and that everyone wants to come together for however long, 24 hours, and build something cool. And that's just an awesome environment. Um, and I think especially in my capacity as a mentor at these events, I've seen just how people with different backgrounds can contribute to um, an impactful project.
Thank you so much for those answers. So going on, can you maybe share a memorable moment from a hackathon you participated in or helped organize as well? Again, to either panelist.
Well, maybe I'll go first again. Yeah, so I find it always fascinating how team dynamics can be affected by a personality mismatch, which is essentially something you find in real life too. Of course, it is exacerbated by the pressure and the time limit in a hackathon. But what is all equally surprising is how a team can bounce back from maybe a breakdown in communication, something that didn't quite click at the beginning between the members of the teams. But I've seen quite a few occasions a team that seems to not quite have found itself to come together. And then something happens. I don't know. It can be something as silly as splashing coffee on the floor. Something that really breaks the dynamic. And then you see how people can put it back together for common benefits, which is also something that hackathons tend to bring into people.
I would say the most meaningful kind of moment, or rather a takeaway from a hackathon, has been that the hackathon is really kind of the start of the journey. Many times I meet people as a mentor, as a competitor, that I'm still in contact with. So I remember there's this one particular person I met. Now it's been maybe 2 or 3 years ago in a hackathon in Abu Dhabi, the NYUAD Social Good Hackathon, which is a wonderful community in itself. And this person still WhatsApp calls me like once every 2 months just to stay in touch. Now he's close to graduating. He's working in SF, building up a startup, which is maybe the most natural extension of a hackathon. Um, and I think that's the most meaningful part for me, which is just like these connections that don't stop at the end of the 24 hours.
So for some other questions, what do you think is the most important factor that separates a winning hackathon project from the rest?
Maybe I can start on this one. I think communication is really important. So, I have a technical background, but more and more I realized how important these soft skills are in hackathons, but also in life. The ability to communicate, the ability to present your work. Um, and in the long run, I think the most successful projects, not necessarily in terms of just winning the hackathon, but sometimes going on to lead to a paper or lead to even a startup or a company, are the ones that are able to communicate their work honestly. So I think there's another end of the spectrum where you like overhype what you've done, right, in those 24 hours, and misrepresent yourself. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I think there's a balance of communicating and shining a light on all the cool things that you've built, but also yeah, being honest about what you've built and celebrating what you've built. Yeah. But I think yeah, those soft skills are very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would just say that the quality of the teamwork and the ability of the scope of the format of the hackathons to bring a collective vision are definitely success factors. You know, it's a fine line to thread. You don't want to over supervise the teams, but you want to be able to give them enough directions so that they make the best out of the time they have ahead of them, and making sure that they, again, what I was saying before, that the teams that are maybe in trouble, but that goes back to what you were saying, communication. The teams that are in trouble because they're not quite clicking, that they are giving a chance to bounce back, and that's really the crucial contribution of mentors and organizers.
Yeah, I think that's also a great point that you have to rally behind a unified vision. It's such a short period of time, these hackathons, which is part of what makes it special. You got to try something and you got to, dive deep 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, like you have to really give it your all in that brief period of time. Yeah, as someone who's been in hackathons, I know exactly where you guys are coming from. So how can teams choose the right challenge or problem to tackle, especially when the topics are highly technical or unfamiliar?
Okay, maybe I'll go first on this one. I think that the first thing that is really important, again, for the cohesion of the team and therefore downstream for the quality of the output, is to find a topic that the team can relate to, to find the motivation. When we have hackathons, like the one in Abu Dhabi is an excellent example. I mean, if you have a very broad spectrum of topics, I think the team will be united if they feel that the topic they have chosen to address somehow relate to themselves. You know, if it is in Oman, it could be coastal erosion. If it is in Morocco, it could be a new fertilizer made out of phosphate, something that is specific to the team itself, to find this motivation. And then, yes, sometimes it gets very, very technical. And I would say baby steps, break it down and go one step after the other. That's yeah, I mean, it's not particularly helpful advice, but it's common sense, but it does help a lot.
Yeah. I think that's really hitting the nail on the head, which is pick a problem that is relevant to you and play on your strengths, right? And be very kind of open as to what qualifies as a strength, right? It might not necessarily be a technical strength. As we spoke about before, these soft skills are also quite important. Storytelling, finding the right motivation, looking into data. Pick something that you care about and pick something that, yeah, you can tie into your own experiences. That usually leads to a lot of success, in my experience.
So what are some common pitfalls you see in hackathon projects, particularly when it comes to presenting or pitching ideas?
But very often, at CERN, the hackathons we do tend to be very technical, in a sense that the outputs can be a piece of code or prototype, something like this. And it is easy, I think, to completely lose the judges in technical details and overlooking the bigger picture. So It's not easy because you're dealing with very passionate people, and so of course when they have achieved something on a scientific or engineering scale, they are super excited to talk about it, and that's completely understandable. That's part of expressing your passion. Just we have to remember that the judges are not necessarily all there to judge the technical aspects. There's many other things that are judged. And so, yeah, that's a common shortcoming that we've seen.
Yeah, I think it really is about reading your audience at the end of the day. The projects that I see vary depending on the hackathon. And the hackathons that we've hosted, for example, at MIT, they have very technical challenges. But I think regardless of how technical it is, um, you have to motivate your problem, right? You have to, um, for example, not just make a good presentation, right? One that isn't overwhelming your audience with too many things. I think that's another thing. Often these hackathons culminate in some sort of pitch or some sort of presentation. Sometimes less is more, and rehearsing and practicing and also getting feedback from mentors is a great idea. So the exact recipe for success, the amount of technical details that might vary depending on the exact hackathon. But make people care about the thing you're actually working on, right? So motivate the problem, um, and don't lose yourself in the details. And engage, I guess, with the audience as well. That helps. Yeah.
So how do you balance technical ambition with time constraints during a hackathon? Any tips for scoping these ideas effectively?
Yeah, maybe I can start. This is you're not trying to build, for example, an entire company in 24 hours. It's more of a proof of concept of an idea that you have, right? Um, in my experience, you have to be very ruthless about prioritizing what you want to work on. Um, so that might mean work on some very like minimum working example to show what you're doing rather than spend half the time working on like a front end or something. So really prioritize what you're spending your time on, um, and delegate across your team. I think the most successful teams are the ones that are able to play to each other's strengths as opposed to just having one person um, take over and do all the work. Like that sort of delegation is really powerful.
Yeah, I think this last statement is key, and it's actually, I'm sure, something we'll talk about again. Yeah, so for me, when you're a scientist and you're working on such a short period of time, the technical aspect can be exceptionally motivating, right? And it would be you would be forgiven to let them overwhelm the content of your work, but actually, when you need to show your work at the end, team diversity should really be used the most, and particularly when it comes to presenting. It's probably a good idea to let the least technical members of the team shape the presentation, just to make sure that the right balance between technical achievement and um, highlighting the other aspects that are also parameters for the judge. Let this task to maybe somebody who is not uh, ankle deep into the technical aspects, because when you're passionate, there's never enough, right, of technical stuff. So let's again play on the strengths of your team. Diverse teams is what you want in a hackathon for a reason, and that's one of them.
Sometimes you can even start thinking of what you want to actually show the world at the end and plan accordingly. That'll help you prioritize what to work on.
Yeah, in the last, we had a hack, an OQI, so Open Quantum Institute hackathon in Lebanon a few weeks ago, and there was this team that really produced a surprisingly innovative algorithm to the point where at the end we said, well, we wouldn't be surprised if this actually ended up being a publication, but it was at the expense of all the rest. And so, of course, they didn't win. But on the other hand, everybody wins in this sort of configuration. You went beyond what was expected of a team in terms of technology. Yes, you didn't win the hackathon, but the stimulation that the hackathon provided put you on a trajectory that you probably did not even thought was possible. So that's what's so nice about hackathons. You have so many different outputs that are not necessarily quantifiable necessarily, but normally you bring home with you something special.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the initially when we hear success in a hackathon, we think prizes, but there's so many outcomes that I've seen, like from startups to archive publications, and um, that probably is more meaningful in the long term, honestly.
And so Martin, for that particular group, who made this like almost novel algorithm, what was their pitfall when presenting?
Well, they were so busy simulating the algorithm on a very concrete problem. I mean, I don't know if I have time to explain, but essentially it was an SDG related. It was how to bring emergency vehicles to the heart of slums, like in some parts of the world. So very, very down to earth in terms of the output, but how to turn that particular problem into a mathematical problem that a quantum computer could actually tackle. That was very tough. So they only left time for a very partial presentation. And they spent probably 80% of the time of the presentation highlighting how innovative this algorithm was. And we were really impressed. But when you're a judge, you have a grading sheet, right? You're not just judging the scientific outcome, you're also judging the soft skills, as was said before, how you present the entire project and what is the SDG impact. And that they didn't have time to do that.
Thank you for that answer. So how important is teamwork compared to individual skills in a hackathon setting? I know that we've touched a little bit on this, but how would you balance those two, teamwork as opposed to individual skills?
Yeah, I completely subscribe to what was said before on that one. This is not a one-person show. And when I mentioned that teams didn't click previously, that's what I was referring to. If you have a particular individual that is so passionate that he or she wants to take the lead and do a lot of the stuff because it's so clear for that person how things should unfold. The problem is it leaves the others, and not as involved as they should be. So for me, this is absolutely fundamental. The team building part is at least as important as the idea, because even if you got the best idea, but you don't have the team to implement it, well, you're not going to go very far. So for me, completely fundamental to have a team that is capable to find itself and work together.
I'd even go as far as to say that if you have the technical background, the most technical skills relevant to, whatever the specialization of the hackathon is, it's kind of your responsibility to bring in the rest of your team, to involve them um, there's a difference between someone who does all the work and a leader in a situation. And hackathons are also a good opportunity to build those interpersonal skills, right? That will be very useful going forward because the most important things, they can't be built alone. So yeah, I would like take this as a challenge, right? To work on bringing out the strengths of your teammates. And if you're really passionate about something, awesome, get other people passionate as well.
To follow up on this, since this upcoming hackathon Flick is virtual, what advice would you have for virtual participants to find a team?
Oof, that's a tough one. Yeah, a team is typically built, or at least the chemistry in a team is being built by interactions that sometimes have very little to do with the problem that is being tackled. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think I'm gonna let that to my colleague.
It is a tough one. As an organizer, I think the first big hackathon I organized was um, QC Hack, also with the Quantum Coalition. Um, and it was fully virtual. And there we got a lot of people engaged. I think there were like 2,000 or so participants at the time. And this is a big question we asked ourselves, right? This was also during the start of the pandemic. Um, and so we had to do it virtually. Um, I think that for organizers, giving people a space to interact, so whether it's Discord or like having some sort of like social or something before the event is really useful because, yeah, you need to be able to talk to someone before, uh, in some capacity, whether it's a message or something, to be able to form a team, right? Then for participants, I would just say it's a short period of time, right? So, worst case scenario, uh, absolutely nothing comes out of these 24 hours. That's the bottom, right? There's only upside potential. So sometimes you just have to kind of trust um, and uh, bring as much effort and passion and whatnot on your end, and trust that other people will also do that. Um, Another thing we did when organizing teams, often it'll be harder for some people to put themselves out there and form a team. Um, if there is some sort of like random team assignment, the only thing I'd say is maybe try to align on expectations or outcomes that people want to get out of the hackathon. Often it's not really as much about the technical skill, it's more about like how much effort they're trying to put in. So one thing we did was we would say, uh, okay, are you trying to like win this hackathon? Are you trying to learn something and whatnot in the random team ingest form? And that we were able to match up teams with similar expectations. So maybe for participants as well, try to find people who are um, as invested or invested in the same way as you are in the event. That'll probably lead to the most success.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I know even in some of the teams that I've been, some of us are like really committed to winning and others are not so much. So that's actually a really good point. So I know that we kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can elaborate on what advice you have for the non-technical participants. Maybe like how can they like maximize their contribution, or like what would you recommend?
Uh, I think at least at CERN, what we are, and in OQI, we are by definition having teams that are very diverse, having so at CERN, it's typically a physicist, an engineer, a computer scientist, plus social sciences, but also product design, things like this, if there is a prototype to be produced at the end. In OQI, we always try to pair technical expertise in quantum computing with SDG expertise, domain experts, if you like. And I would say for non-technical people, you have an essential role. As I was saying before, being a scientist, you do not necessarily you're not equipped to broadcast the message you're trying to produce in a way that is understandable by the greater number. It's one of the challenges for scientists that we tend to be a bit too technical sometimes. And in a presentation in front of judges, if you have people that are maybe less technical, I think they should be the ones taking the lead there. In any case, as was said before, you've got to delegate. There is a reason why societies are so mixed, right? I mean, if science were the only solution, everybody would be a scientist, and thank God it's not the case. You need that diversity because everybody will bring a different angle to the solution or the perception of the problem. So there should be absolutely no unease for non-technical people to join hackathons. They are just as needed as the technical expertise.
Yeah, I would just say be confident in yourself. In that if you don't understand, what the issue is or what the problem is, then that means that your team doesn't really understand it well, right? If your technical counterparts are not able to explain it, then they don't really understand it well, and that's something that you need to work on together, right? So it's especially in these hackathons, people, I mean, people come with different backgrounds, but everyone's learning, right? Even the technical people, they're learning. So um, be confident in yourself, and I think, now we're at this point, as I guess the name of this panel, AI for Good, where we can use these AI tools to kind of break that barrier a little bit more. Even as someone who has a technical training, who has worked, like I worked as a, for example, software engineer at Facebook before grad school. I use AI all the time, right? Whether it's Copilot or even just like researching things. You have all these tools now at your fingertips. That helps to break that perceived technical barrier. Use them. Uh, Ask questions. Ask as many questions as possible, and then also play to your strengths. Some of the most impactful team members that I've mentored in the past, it did not have any technical background, but were like specialized in, for example, languages, um, and or had on the ground experience with the problem that we were tackling, right? Yeah, so play to your strengths, have the confidence to keep asking questions, and use the tools that are at your disposal.
And I like what you said at the beginning very much. For non-technical people, you have this essential role to calibrate the message of the technical people. One of the hackathons we had at CERN was trying to build an interactive exhibit for the general public, illustrating or explaining what we do at CERN. Because we have this problem that we're dealing with particles that cannot be shown. And okay, physics is not the most intuitive discipline to illustrate. So we put teams together of physicists, but also product designers, because there was a prototype to produce at the end of an exhibit. And one tip we gave to all the teams was the physicists had to explain to the product designers what they are trying to illustrate. And believe me, that was not easy. That was really not easy. And it helped so much because it was too hard for them to put themselves in the shoes of the general public. When you've got an education dedicated to science, it's not easy to shift gear and illustrate what is for you everyday work, for somebody for who this is going to be one in a lifetime opportunity to touch particles physics through an exhibit.
And I have a question for Shantanu. So, as a hackathon participant, what's one thing that you wish you had known, like starting out in your first hackathon?
Mm. I mean, besides all this awesome advice that we're sharing right now, um,
guess I would say like what was like one key thing that like changed kind of the hackathon for you, or
Yeah.
one thing that like really helped?
Yeah. I think it's this concept of asymmetric returns, which is that like um the downside risk of a hackathon is just so small. There's none, right? It's only upside. And so I think the first hackathon, well, I mean, my first hackathon was a long time ago in high school, but maybe the first relevant hackathon to this conversation, I built, it was this IBM hackathon, and we built some open source package that used Qiskit to simulate surface codes. Uh, and I didn't know how surface code worked at all when I started. By the end, we had this thing that eventually ended up like in the Qiskit ecosystem that led to like uh, I became like a Qiskit advocate after it. I learned a lot more about quantum error correction. I'm doing my PhD in quantum error correction, a slightly different kind now. But the asymmetric returns are crazy, right? So so even though the those returns might not be clear in the moment, just put in your full effort and give it your all, right? The upside is can be pretty cool, can be pretty crazy.
Thank you. And for Martin, can you tell us a bit about the Open Quantum Institute's Hackathon in a Box? And yeah, you can take your time on this.
Yes, sure. So maybe I should start by highlighting the mission of OQI. So we have been tasked to share as widely and freely as possible the technology on quantum algorithms. So we have a technology track, but also obviously we got an education track. And so part of the things we're going to do, we're going to set up an internship program to give young graduates a first on-the-job training after the end of their university life. But we're also hoping to do hackathons. We have an ambitious goal. We aim at organizing 2 hackathons per year and per continent, focusing on what we call underserved geography. So typically the global south, right? So we were in Lebanon in April. We are going to go to Ghana in July, then to Egypt, then Thailand, and we'll end the year with Uruguay. And 2026, we're already filling up this pipeline. The hackathon in a box is essentially a guide to putting together these hackathons, but also to running them. OQI is committed to, let's say, to capacity building. So we're going to help our partners in the countries that have expressed an interest for the formats that we're offering. We're going to offer them the possibility to follow the advice, but also the structure that we have tested many times. And the hackathon in Abu Dhabi is clearly the source of our inspiration for this hackathon in a box. So it is very detailed. It goes from how do you select candidate institutions who would like to take over the leadership of the organization? How are you going to advertise, call for participants? How are you going to train the participants before the events? How are you going to choose the location, secure the access to simulators, if possible, even quantum computing hardware? How are you going to reward the winners? I mean, all these things are very well detailed to provide an easy way to organize your first hackathon. I'm pretty sure that after something like this, things will evolve. But at least it gives you a guide to a successful hackathon on quantum computing for sustainable development goals, which is really a must in the model that we have, focusing on SDGs.
Thank you. That sounds really cool. So Shantanu, having worked across different quantum and AI projects, what's your advice for making a hackathon project really stand out to the judges?
Yeah, one thing that I haven't really mentioned is have some sort of plan for what you want to do next. So, this goes from technical advice like, okay, you built some code, you can publish it on PyPy, right? It's very easy to upload things so that other people can just like pip install them and use them, right? You are working on a proof of concept for a business. Um, think about how you want to grow it, or at least what your first target beachhead market might be, right? Like detail some steps for what you want to do next, and then for the most success, and again, success not defined by winning this hackathon, for the most success, the most meaningful impact of that project, follow through on that. Like this package that I mentioned before, we honestly, it was in a pretty bad state at the end of the hackathon. We didn't win anything. Um, but all of the quote unquote success that came out of that package was that we kept working on it afterwards when the hackathon was over. Um, we kept learning. And so that's the main piece of advice, that think about the next steps and then also follow through on them.
Great, I think that's really good advice. So if participants are running out of time, what should they prioritize? This is for both panelists.
Uh, That's a good. I think you could be strategic. I mean, judges typically have a grading system that is a weighted average of the different parameters. So probably you want to make sure you tick all the boxes where the weight is the heaviest. I mean, that's common sense. It is true also that making sure that you rehearse enough that you meet the deadline. Typically you are given a time for a pitch, whether it's 5 or 7 or whatever minutes. It's good to have rehearsed a bit, because if you haven't, it will show, and it would give a bit of a disappointing flavor to the whole thing, because that's the last time the judges and the team will be participating, in a sense, in an active participation. Then it's just wait and see how, if we won or not. But the presentation is the final, it's what brings it all together, right? It's the final step in the hackathon. So you probably want to rehearse it enough that you, even if it's not touching on everything that you're supposed to, at least you wrap it up nicely,
Yeah, I guess by the nature of a hackathon, you're never done. So in some sense, you're always running out of time. Think about the deliverable. Um, as Martin said, as we've said in the earlier part of this hour, that presentation really matters. But also think about the other deliverables. Sometimes it's not a presentation, sometimes it's, I don't know, submitting your code or something like that. In that case, make a really nice README, right? That maybe matters a lot more than the details of your code. Um, yeah, so and also, yeah, work together as in this final sprint. It's okay if you have 1 hour left and you have 4 teammates, then you have 4 hours of work left, right? If you have 1 hour left and you just have one person working on it, then you have 1 hour left, right? So just yeah, that final crunch is really a time where I think the most successful teams come together and everyone is working on something.
And just since Martin had touched on this before about how important it is to delegate, do you have any advice for maybe those who don't have a lot of experience in this area? Like, what are some tips to like delegate tasks?
Maybe I can start on this one. Um, Start. Often people don't. Often people would just say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then just they start working on it. Start by like some small task, right? Bring people in. If you're the most confident person in the room or the one with the most expertise that leads to that confidence, yeah, then it's your responsibility to start delegating and to bring in people who are more new to the situation.
Yes, you have to trust your team. Identifying the key skills that everybody is equipped with should clearly lead your choice, right? If you have a product designer, that's the person who should really put the pieces of your prototype design the pieces of your prototype. But trust, you have to trust, because also if you don't trust and you try to delegate without trust, people will feel it, so it defeats the purpose of trying to delegate.
That's some great advice. Okay, to wrap up as our final question, for both of you guys, if you could give just one piece of advice to first-time hackathon participants, what would it be?
Have fun. You have to go in there and want to have fun. It's unpredictable how a hackathon is going to unfold, so there's no point worrying about it. Just go there as you are. The simple fact that you're there shows that you have something to give, something to bring. So don't try to analyze too much the situation. It's just go with your heart.
Ask a lot of questions, and I know this takes a lot of courage. Ask a lot of questions. If you don't understand something, ask. And as we said before, this will be a benefit to your team. Yeah, that's the main thing. Just keep asking a lot of questions and keep communicating. Don't cut yourself off. Just keep engaging.
Great. Thank you guys so much for these responses. With that, we'll wrap up the session. Thank you both for being here. It was a really wonderful conversation today. I know I learned a lot of new things, so I hope our audience enjoyed this panel, and thank you.
Likewise, thanks so much for having me, and it's nice to meet you, Martin, Janette.
Yeah, very nice meeting you too, and thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you've learnt something new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the poll, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. We invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits, poster boards, the e-shop, and build your personalized AI for Good program. Let's shape the future of AI for good.